Hey, this is David Lee Goodman. I'm a real estate agent, property manager, and a real estate investor. And today I've got Mr. Josh Jones, who's a local lender in the Nashville market. Josh, how you doing?
Doing great. How about yourself?
Doing really well. I'm excited about the topic today. We're going to be talking about short-term rentals as it relates specific to the Nashville market. And so I want to get into the nuances of what it's like to get a loan for a short-term rental property specific to Nashville, but also any other market where you're in a metropolitan area where you may have some restrictions on where a short-term rental property could be. For us in Nashville, if you're going to have a non-owner occupied short-term rental, it's got to be on a commercially zoned lot, which can affect what kind of loan, or does it affect what kind of loan you're getting? Also, we're in Nashville, again, developers are creating developments and complexes of just short-term rental properties, which obviously, is meant for investors primarily. So if you're in a complex where you have a bunch of short-term rental properties, all of the owners on those are going to be investors, which can also affect loans, whether you're going conventional or whether you're doing an investor kind of loan. So I just want to get into that today. That's what we're going to be talking about.
Just for people that don't know, what defines a short-term? How many days? Is it 3 months, 6 months, 30 days? What do they consider that?
Short-term rental is anything that is less than 30 days.
Okay.
And that's where the restrictions really are held. So in Nashville, anything that is rented for less than 30 days has to be zoned commercially.
What do they call it? Anything over 1 month?
Anything over a month, we call it medium term.
Gotcha.
Or it could be long term, but Nashville doesn't care if it's over 30 days. It's anything less than 30 days has the restrictions.
Gotcha.
So let's do a quick recap on owner-occupied short-term rentals versus non-owner-occupied short-term rentals, and this is specific to the Nashville market. If you live in the property, you're an owner-occupant, you are not going to have much trouble renting out a space in your house as a short-term rental. Loans on that are pretty easy to get. They look like primary loans. Great. Let's talk more about non-owner occupied short-term rentals, and this is kind of where it gets a little bit more complicated. And if you go to my website, it's dlgoodmanproperties.com. I'll walk you through it. You go to the first page, Airbnbs, hit short-term rentals, and then you'll see a video on the difference between a non-owner occupied and owner occupied. You can get your answers, your questions answered on the differences, what is eligible, what's not eligible, all that good stuff is on the website. But that's not what we're talking about today. Today we're going to talk about specifically what the lending process is for those, since in some markets, if you're going to buy, like say you're in BF, Ohio, and you're just going to buy like a regular house, you could basically get, and in that area, you probably don't have these restrictions on Airbnb because Airbnb doesn't actually care. Right. So if you're just getting a house in, somewhere in Indiana, what kind of loans are you looking at for that kind of house?
If we're owner-occupied or non-owner-occupied?
Or, just anything. If there's no restrictions from the city.
If there's no restrictions, you always want to go with a government-backed loan, conventional loan. FHA doesn't do investment loans, but there are ways where you can turn an FHA loan into an investment loan technically. But you always want to go those routes first before going into the other type of loans that are for non-owner occupied that you're going to have higher interest rates. But if we're looking at a money saving standpoint, you always want to look at your conventional or FHA or just your standard products first. But no, every loan is different, so there's always different criteria that's got to be met on every loan, so it's kind of scenario by scenario basis.
Right. So when you're in different cities looking at conventional, now if you're past 10 investment properties, you're not really eligible for conventional loans at that point. That's when you're looking at DSCR loans, investor loans, different portfolio loans, right?
Right.
Okay, so why can't you have 10 loans in a conventional?
So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac set a limit years ago when they redid guidelines that you can only own up to 10 properties that are financed under their umbrella, basically, which Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac is ran by the government. They're a government-sponsored entity. So after that, that's when you have to look at different types of investment loans, such as a DSCR loan, which stands for debt service coverage ratio loan, which we will get into. Or you can look at a bridge loan, which is a short-term loan, 1 to 3 years loan that you finance it, get in the house, and then you refinance before those 3 years is up.
Great. Okay, cool. So as that relates to the Nashville market, so is it possible, so if we're in Nashville and you're looking at a non-owner occupied eligible property, we know that the zoning on that is going to be more commercial.
Mm-hmm.
Does that automatically say, does that mean we can't use a conventional? Have you used conventional loans on properties like that before? Are those loan products that we can use?
I have. It's kind of like you said, depends on the zoning. So like done a loan for a townhome that was commercially zoned, but we were able to do short-term rental and do conventional financing to where he was looking at the time, this was, I want to say 5 months ago, he was looking at 9% interest going on the brokered route, but we ended up about 6.5% interest because we went conventional financing.
Right.
Which, especially for investors, when the main thing is making your money back, that's a big deal. So it kind of like we were talking about, it's a case by case basis.
Okay. So some cases we can do conventional, but it's just case by case.
Yeah.
So assuming we can't do conventional, what are some other products that you guys or that you've used or would use?
So that's where you can look into, like I was saying, the debt service coverage ratio loans, which what those are is, let's say you're buying a primary residence. Everybody knows what an appraisal is. That is just a sales comparison of the neighborhood to try to come up with a value of the property. Debt service coverage ratio does the exact same thing, but it does a rental comparison of the neighborhood. So what they do is they look at the neighborhood and compare similar houses to see what they think rental income what it would come in at. And a lot of lenders typically like to see 1 and 1. So when I say 1 and 1, they want your principal and interest to be exactly what that appraisal, at least what that rental appraisal came back at.
Right.
And then you have other lenders that will let you go below 1 too. Mm-hmm. So, but that always comes with a caveat, whether it be a hit to interest rate or what, and where you really gotta run the numbers, make sure you're making a solid investment.
Mm-hmm. And do you guys have, where you're at now, have different products for this?
We have probably 20 to 30 different debt service coverage ratio loans that we can broker out. Mm-hmm. For conventional financing, you have to have previous rental experience on your tax returns. So you can't just come in and get conventional financing
for a short-term rental.
Yeah, for short-term rental particularly, you have to have previous rental experience on your tax returns.
That's really interesting guideline.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing I'll say as a caveat to conventional. There's a lot more guidelines and hoops you have to get through, and then all the other portfolio or DSCR loans, they're going to have their own guidelines too. And so I think that's why it's just important to be working with someone who can kind of shop those around, because all those guidelines are going to be a little bit different. Mm-hmm. So definitely work with someone that has experience doing short-term rentals. Can you talk about, again, bridge loans and hard money loans too?
Yeah.
You had mentioned where do those come into play?
So bridge loans are, once again, like let's say, for example, you own more than 10 properties. Let's use that example on conventional, and you cannot get a conventional loan, but you have found a great deal that you do not want to pass up. You can get a bridge loan, which is kind of like a hard money loan in a sense, because you're getting a short-term loan that's typically 1 to 3 years, and the goal is to get in the property, and some people buy them and flip them, some people buy them and hold them, and then refinance it later, find a way to finance it. And then hard money loans, those are private investors that typically will do more riskier deals than your government loans. We were talking about conventional. That's why, kind of going back to where we started at the beginning, always try to look at conventional first because everything is on a risk basis. So a hard money lender is going to chart where you might be able to get a 7% interest on an investment property right now. You might be looking at 10 to 12% interest on a hard money lender because they don't have restricted guidelines. They're going to follow their own guidelines, kind of like you were talking about earlier, but they're going to charge you for it.
And then there's also the option of, like, if you have private money lenders.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
relationships that you're in. But that's, again, another case by case.
Which we have, once again, at our company, we have hard money lenders and just private investors by themselves that we can reach out to see if they'll do the loan. And it's honestly how you've said multiple times, it's case by case. We send them the scenario, they look it over and decide. It's just kind of how we've talked about in previous videos, and you talked about it's become more challenging because of how the economy is right now, and just money in America. I mean, people are not wanting to take on as much risk as they have been in the past. So it's really just analyzing that deal and making sure the numbers make sense.
Right. And so that's perfect. I think that's what it comes down to. And if you need help analyzing a deal and you're in the Nashville market, again, I think my website's really well catered to this. You can go to dlgoodmanproperties.com, hover over investors, hit Airbnb. If you click Airbnb, this will show you a search of short-term rental, non-owner occupied short-term rental properties that are currently on the market that are more than likely eligible for short-term rentals. And we've done that through filtering through the private or remarks in the MLS to make sure that this is a short-term rental eligible property, which is not every home. It's just specific homes, like 1 in 1,000, I think is what a friend of ours just said. So you'll want to use the right searching tool. If you're looking for help analyzing deals like this anywhere around Nashville, give us a call. Where can they reach you, Josh?
So we're located downtown. I work for Auto Mortgage, downtown Nashville, 1033 Demonbreun. But kind of like you said earlier, you can Google me, Joshua Jones, Nashville Mortgage, and you will find me there. Happy to help in any way I can.
Yeah, and you can find me at dlgoodmanproperties.com. You can email David at dlgoodmanproperties.com, or leave a comment, leave a question, let us know if what you guys think of these videos. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.